Hello and Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to this lecture on Sustainable Development Goals. In this lecture, we will cover the 17 SDGs and we'll go through each one of them and understand what was the need for SDGs and its relationship with MDGs as well. Okay, so without further ado, let's start the lecture. So SDGs comprises of 17 goals, 169 targets and 230 indicators. So instead of reading these indicators one by one, I'll just move forward. So MDGs were the first ones. In the next slide, we will see something about little bit about the history and what the objectives of the two programs were. In this slide, what we are trying to show is that these 8 boxes are what MDGs stood for. Those were the 8 MDG goals. And these smaller boxes are SDGs. So the ones above 3 and 3, 6 and 3 here. So these 9 goals of SDGs, they are connected to or related to what MDGs had before. So these smaller boxes are related to, as shown by these dotted lines, these are related to the previous MDGs. But these 8 goals are completely entirely new. So this is kind of a relationship between MDGs and SDGs. So primarily the objective is to eradicate poverty, to improve development. In our last lecture, we talked about HDI. That was one of the ways to measure human development, but there is a lot behind those indicators. We were looking at the final outputs, final outcomes. We were looking at life expectancy, and we were also looking at education, mean years of education. Those are final outcomes, final products of your policies at the back end. MDGs and SDGs try to aim at the building blocks of these final outputs and outcomes. Okay, so a little bit about the history. MDGs were from 2000 and up to 2015. SDGs and MDGs both, they are measurable outcomes, measurable goals. So the primarily what if you are thinking why do we need MDGs and why do we need SDGs, primarily think about it as a global initiative to go in this similar direction. So every government, when they are going for elections or something like this, they talk about poverty, they talk about unemployment, they talk about growth. But the underlying policies are sometimes not really useful. What they do in MDGs and SDGs, they came up with some indicators that are measurable, and if we design policies keeping in view these indicators, the idea is that ultimately you will achieve sustainable development. Okay. So for example, eradicating poverty. Everybody wants to eradicate poverty. Everybody talks about eradicating poverty. But what goes on behind it? What are the challenges? We have been talking about poverty for a long time now, but reduction in poverty is not really visible in many countries. What is the reason behind it? So these goals came up with some of the indicators, some of the measurable outputs that could improve the situation on ground. And the best thing about these goals is that everybody has to follow the same goals. You can follow different strategies to achieve the same goal, but everybody knows more than 150 countries, I think 180 signed Millennium Development Goals. So those targets, they pledged to it. They said, okay, we are going to try and achieve those goals, which means that the entire world almost was aiming towards the one single objective. When we talk about one goal at a time, so everybody wants to eradicate poverty using these goals. So that was the main reason behind it. And for 15 years, it was MDGs was from 2000 to 2015. Some of the indicators were measured from 2000. So the idea was that from 2000 to 2015, if you were standing at some place, let's say 80% poverty, I'm just making things up, in 2000, then this country would have to achieve half of this poverty rate in 2015. So you have to halve the poverty rate in your country. So there were many indicators like this for 15 years of time. So when MDGs kind of expired, SDGs replaced them. And in one of the slides, I'll show you that SDGs are more stringent than MDGs. They are more, they have more indicators. They have granular details behind each and every indicator, and kind of difficult to follow as compared to MDGs. But MDGs were binding. SDGs are not binding. So we'll talk about that later. Okay. So some of the things are water and sanitation, child mortality, improving mental health, and combating HIV/AIDS. Okay, what did MDG achieve? So there has been a lot of debate about whether MDGs were successful or not. In some indicators, we can see a clear improvement. More than 1 billion people have been lifted out of extreme poverty. Now, how much of this is attributable to MDGs? This is up to debate. Child mortality dropped by more than half since 1990. Again, attribution has to be made carefully. But one thing is for sure, that what MDGs managed to do was to bring everyone on the same page with the same end goal in mind, even though their policies and strategies to reach those goals were very different, but they had a similar like pole to reach, the end pole, the goal post. Okay, so this is not a simple thing. It's very important that 180 countries trying to achieve the same thing using the same indicators. Okay, that's very, very important. Having said that, it doesn't mean that all problems have solved in the world. Pakistan did not manage to achieve I should say, only managed to achieve some of the MDGs. Pakistan could not achieve many of the health related MDGs, especially stunting rates. Stunting rates have started declining recently, but it has been a long-term problem for Pakistan for at least two decades. Okay. So as I said before, SDGs are kind of replacing MDGs with 17 goals instead of 8 MDG goals, and climate change. There are many different additions to the MDGs as well. In the graph in the figure that I showed you before, you saw that some of the indicators were entirely new. I know that this slide is very tight, text is very much cramped. The intention is not to make you read these, just trying to show you that SDGs are much more stringent than MDGs. So this is just an example. SDG 1, we will look at it in a separate slide with a slightly bigger font. It will be much easier to read in that slide. I'm just trying to show here is that MDG 1 had eradication of extreme poverty and hunger both combined in one, and those were covered by 3 different goals. Okay, to halve the proportion of people whose daily income is less than 1.25, in other words, halve the poverty rate, to achieve full and productive employment as well as decent work for all. So to halve, and also third one, to halve the proportion of individuals suffering from hunger in the period between 1990 to 2005. These were the three indicators, very simply put, to cover the eradication of extreme poverty and hunger. Now look at SDG 1. So this is kind of two SDG indicators combined in one MDG indicator. SDG 1 is no poverty, and SDG 2 is no hunger. And only even within only poverty, so cutting this in half, we have how many? 6 sub-indicators, and some of them are really detailed. They are talking about systems, they are talking about institutions, mobilization of resources, policy frameworks, regional and international collaborations. So as I said before, these are the guidelines. These are the gears and tools and parts of the machine that are working in the background. What we see as the outcome is a reduction in poverty, but behind that there are many other issues related to gender equality, rights of different segments of population, social protection systems, and access to finance. We also have cooperation between countries within sub-regions of a country. Then we have also many different collaborations across different goals as well. So this is just for poverty. We'll go through these later, few slides later also. So this slide is just trying to show you that SDGs are much more stringent. Their goals are slightly more difficult to achieve, ambitious we could say, and also higher in numbers. So there are 3 MDGs, not MDGs, 3 indicators within MDG 1 and 6 indicators within half of that MDG. So just to eradicate poverty, there are 6, and then within these indicators there are furthermore. So as we saw in the beginning, 260 sub-indicators are in this. So in a way, it sounds too good to be too good to achieve in many cases, but the thing is that it provides you a guideline. These goals are to give you a guideline instead of every country looking to eradicate poverty differently, looking at different indicators, how to measure poverty. So internationally comparable, that the threshold is very important, because then every country can compare their progress with other countries. Otherwise, if every country is following a different poverty line, then it's very difficult to compare. And since it's kind of a race between countries, who develops first, GDP growth and development, everything like this is of course linked with the it's kind of a race. Every country is taking part in a race and trying to outperform each other. Of course, they care more about people inside the country, but since it's a global economy, people can easily migrate from less prosperous country to the more developed country because of the good quality of living. There is a good incentive for the less prosperous country to improve their standard of living, so that not only their good human capital stays in this country, but also it becomes a platform for not platform, but an attractive site for other qualified, skilled, innovative labor force to migrate into your country and then contribute into your GDP growth. So all these things are combined, and we'll see later on that many of the goals are also interlinked. Improving water quality would improve health, which could be very useful for productivity, meaning it would ultimately help in reducing poverty. So in a way, water is linked with poverty, and the other way around as well. We have seen that many of the data sets show that rich households are more likely to have access to good quality water. So when you eradicate poverty, you allow them to access good quality water, and at the end, they improve their health as well. And many of the indicators are on health, as we'll see later on. One of the points I also would like to mention related to MDGs is that in Pakistan we use PSLM data, highest data, and most of these surveys were to measure MDGs. So MDGs kind of bound the governments to measure those indicators that were required to kind of track down the progress of each country. And PSLM and HIES were those surveys, and they are continuing right now, trying to connect more with SDGs. Of course, MDGs are no longer activated anymore. So SDGs, we are trying to connect the same surveys with SDGs with better indicators. One of the examples I'll mention later on in water as well, that previously water was not, the indicator for water was not that stringent. It was just improved water. Now you have to measure it even in more detail. Okay, so many household surveys that we use for our research in Pakistan and other countries as well, they were designed and administered to measure MDGs. So this is one of the contributions of MDGs, that there is a lot of research going on even outside the boundaries of MDGs, using the surveys that they have done to measure MDGs. So it's a very important contribution, and it's not really talked about when we talk about the contributions of MDGs in the development of the countries. So the first SDG, end poverty in all its forms everywhere. So that is the first SDG. SDGs are bold commitments to end poverty in all forms, and this involves targeting the most vulnerable, increasing basic resources, and supporting communities. So many of the rural policies involve communities, because community systems in rural areas are much more intact and much more let's say useful when we talk about implementing policies than in urban areas, because in urban areas households are not as connected as in rural areas. So the existing community system, the network that exists informally in the rural households, villages and so on, policies that are targeted towards improving the lives of these individuals use these community systems. Okay, so these are the goals that I mentioned before, slightly bigger font. I hope that it is readable. So by 2030, these are also 15 years. So SDGs were adopted, like they were kind of if you can say activated in 2016, 1st of January. So in 2015, MDGs were closed. SDGs started from January 2016. So for 15 years from then, by 2030, we are looking to reduce poverty. We are looking to improve the social protection systems, and so targeting is also mentioned here. It's not like it's a blanket coverage, but emphasis is on prioritizing those who are most vulnerable. Okay, and equal rights to economic resources. Economic resources do not only include money, it also includes basic services, land, because in Pakistan, when we talk about agricultural economy, there is a problem with land ownership and access to land for farmers. So all this is covered in this one. So if there should be policies to make sure that basic services and ownerships are given equally with equal rights, but the priority should be given to the most vulnerable. Okay, and mobilization of resources is not only financial resources, also human resources. So mobilization could be within a country, from one sub-region to the other. It could be across different countries, because these are like world is trying to achieve all these goals together. So these sustainable development goals also put big responsibility on the developed world as well. So if poor countries are struggling, developed countries have the responsibility under these goals to help them out through aid, through human resources, through capital, through technology transfer, through collaboration, through policy making, and so on. Okay, designing frameworks. And developed countries are generally more capable to design policies because of their better human capital and better experience with the new technology and new resources. And developed countries have the responsibility under SDGs to help the poor countries in this under SDGs. So the second SDG is end hunger, achieve food security, and improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. So since agriculture is connected with food, this is why agriculture is shown up here. And it's very simple that agricultural productivity, simple in the sense to understand these goals, not to achieve these goals. There are very important bottlenecks behind many of these indicators, and those are context specific as well. That's why no one policy can be applied to all the 180 plus countries that signed these SDGs. So they have to be context specific, but countries can help each other out. Okay, so this is the idea behind all this. The ambitious target is to end hunger and ensure access by all people to food, of course. And malnutrition includes stunting, wasting. When we talk about malnutrition, it also includes obesity. So this goal number 2 also includes this. And agricultural productivity, when the idea is to double it, and small scale food producers should be prioritized. When you double agriculture productivity, it not only gives more jobs, it also solves the problem of hunger, because food gets cheaper and more people can afford it. And agricultural practices, so one thing is to increase productivity by including technology, or maybe by using different types of seeds to get the most out of the soil. But it's not only about agricultural productivity. Increasing productivity means that you can produce more, but if there are no safety measures taken, then floods, disasters, inappropriate transport mechanism, inappropriate storage mechanism can lead up to a lot of wastage of these resources. And then genetic diversity of seeds. Now see that this is getting more and more specific to agriculture. So it's, at the very broad scale, you are looking at reducing hunger, but they are looking at very minute details. They are talking about the diversity of seeds, different species of seeds, context is specific, which soil is better for what. All these agricultural sciences come into play here. Increasing investment to international collaboration in like reducing increasing the knowledge in agricultural productivity, the science in agricultural productivity. Many scholars were sent to developed countries from Pakistan to get degrees, masters and PhD degrees in agricultural sciences to improve this very problem. So they learned new techniques. They brought back some of the knowledge from the developed world, and they applied and improved agricultural productivity in Pakistan. So all these kind of collaborations have been given a lot of value in this SDG framework. So in addition to the production side, we also need access to markets, not only domestic markets but also international markets. But we have to be careful as well. So if we export too much, then it means that it creates shortage in the domestic market, and it leads to increase in the prices of the commodities. Okay, so trade also comes into play here. So you can see that there are overlaps in different sectors. Third SDG is ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all ages. So good health, lower hunger also ensures good health, but good health is and well-being is a separate goal in SDGs, and it takes into account the economic and social inequalities. Then it's only not talks about gender inequality, it talks about income inequality and stuff like this. Even though for gender inequality, again, you can already see that there are overlaps. So there is a separate SDG on gender inequality, but it also comes into this goal as well. So specifically, global maternal mortality ratio has to go down. This is the first important indicator in this. Under 5 deaths are also at the target of this. Reduce AIDS, tuberculosis, malaria, and neglected tropical diseases, and combat hepatitis. Premature mortality is one of the concerns in many countries, and this is also in Pakistan as well. Prevention and treatment of substance abuse. There have been a lot of effort on this. This is a problem that is growing. Many strategies are at work, but this is one of those problems that has been there for a long time, and it is not going away. Okay. And then we talk about deaths and injuries, road traffic accidents. So to reduce road traffic accidents, you need to have better infrastructure, and there is a separate goal for that. So again, goals are interconnected. Reproductive health care is also there, and then affordable medicine. So medicines should be regulated. In Pakistan, many medicines are imported from India and other countries. So there is a need to increase the capacity to produce medicines that are frequently needed in Pakistan. We can save a lot of money there. So this is one of those things. And one of the problems with giving access to medicine to everyone, reducing prices, is the copyrights. So pharmaceutical industry involves a lot of patenting, innovation, and these innovations are expensive. There are drug trials, there are many different regulations that they have to go through, and because these research and development activities are very expensive and they involve a lot of profits, private firms do not want to give away their ideas. Well, this is very simple. And if you want your domestic pharmaceutical firms to invest in these research and development ventures, you have to make sure that intellectual property rights are in place, and also you have sufficient funds to make sure that the domestic firms are able to invest in research and development. All right, fourth SDG is to ensure inclusive and quality education for all, and promote lifelong learning. Quality education, in labor economics, we have seen that it's not only about increasing average years of schooling. In previous lecture, we saw that in many countries, including Pakistan, average years of schooling, meaning how many years and on average a person in Pakistan is educated, and it turned out to be a very low number. I don't remember it right now. Even if we increase that number to, let's say, 14, 15 years, is it sufficient? Answer is no. So you can give away certificates for free, and you can easily trick these indicators by giving away the certificates and degrees to everyone in the country, and simply very easily you will increase the average age of schooling, because people will have a degree to show for, and you can count the number and the number will increase. But it's not only about the certificate, it's not only about completing a certain years of education, it's also about the quality of education. Not only quality of education, but also inclusive quality education. Inclusive not only in sense of poverty, so that poor people can also access this good quality education, but also in terms of access for both male and female. So this has more to do with norms and culture rather than accessibility from supply side. So there should be a demand for it, and there should be an awareness in the general public, so that everybody knows the importance of getting education, not only for boys but also for girls. It should be completely free. It should be equitable. Completely free education is something that many countries, developed countries, have been following. Completely free education in developing countries is not non-existent, but quality is questionable because of lack of funds, of course. So infrastructure is not that good, and government schools do not manage to attract good quality teachers, and because of that the quality of education is low, and because of that many people who can afford to finance the private education, they prefer to go for private education, and that's why the quality of education in the government schools keeps on going down. Then again, going into further details, it's not only about schools, it's also about colleges and universities, it's also about vocational training. Then you also have to look into people who have different needs, special needs. You have to make sure that the system involves them in this policy as well. Education facilities should be improved. They should be at the international level, good quality level. You can relate it very easily to what is happening right now. This is April 16, 2020. We are dealing with this pandemic of coronavirus, and all schools, almost all schools, have to go for online teaching. So if your school does not have good quality internet, good quality computer lab, and your teachers also do not know how to use certain softwares to do online teaching, then it's a big problem. So your teachers should be equipped with all these new technologies, so that education can reach a level that is comparable with other countries in the world as well. Good quality teachers, increase supply of them. How to increase supply of them? You have to train your teachers either domestically or send them abroad. Make sure that you have good enough incentives for them to come back home. If you invest in them and they stay abroad, then there is it's a waste of money and human resource. So it's not enough to send them abroad and train them. You have to incentivize them so that they can come back and serve their own country. Achieve gender equality and empower women and girls. So this is what I said before. There is a separate goal number 5 for gender equality. Discrimination against women and girls for human rights. So it's not only limited to job market. It's not only limited to job market. It's not only limited to school access. It's about every aspect of human right that involves a person to perform to his or her full capacity. So women should be given equal human rights as compared to the male members of the society, so that they can achieve whatever they want to achieve. That is the main idea behind all this. Then they also differentiate between elder women, younger women, the needs are different, household needs, job market needs, school needs, and because we are talking about free education and accessibility to schools for both genders, then for female students there are many needs that there are different as compared to the male students. And when we are talking about good quality infrastructure, that also should account for now I'm talking about schools. Good quality infrastructure of schools should also account for the different needs of female students. This is also included in this gender equality goal. So specifically these are the points: violence, discrimination, harmful practices, not only participation in labor force but also in politics, and everywhere where the human rights are applicable. Reproductive health, economic resources, empowerment of women to be involved in decision making. They should also have access to legal system as much as the male members of the country, and there should be a promotion of gender equality in the country. All right. Sixth is ensure access to water and sanitation for all. This goal has been added separately after MDGs. This was hidden in a way in 8 MDGs before, but this aspect has its own SDG, which is called SDG 6. And here we are talking about access to water and sanitation. So previously, MDGs had a measure called improved water and improved sanitation. So improved had an inbuilt quality assumption in it. So the assumption was that if a household is using certain kind of infrastructure for water and for sanitation, they are considered to be using a good quality infrastructure. But later on, research found that improved water and improved sanitation, they are not necessarily safe. This is why SDGs have much improved or more stringent indicators to measure water and sanitation. So clean water, the indicator is in like 1.5 lines, but it involves a lot of effort to achieve this line. Universal, meaning everybody should have access to it. Equitable access, again, all segments geographically is under universal. Equitable access, meaning poor and rich, they all should have access to it. It should be safe. It means water should be of good quality and it should be affordable. So if you have good quality water available, it is available in Pakistan, but if it is expensive, then there is no use. It doesn't mean that the SDG goal has been achieved. And then we should have adequate and equitable sanitation and hygiene. We should have improved water quality. It is inbuilt in the first goal as well, and increase water use efficiency. Again, this is one of the examples of how they dig deeper into the problems of water and sanitation. In every goal, they dig very deep into the problems of the indicators. So water use efficiency is that not only in our households we are more responsible in using water, but also in the supply systems of government, the method should be used so that the wastage is minimal. Integrated water resource management is through collaboration, because there are many agencies involved. Household drinking water is a mandate of different agency in the government. Irrigation water is of different agency or institute. And the idea here is that they should all water resource management should be done with good level of collaboration between these departments. Then we have to make sure that our water is not wasted. Most of the water that goes through the rivers in Pakistan, it is wasted because of lack of dams. and Pakistan is working on this. Is constructing 2 dams in northern Pakistan so that water can be saved and used. The problem for water shortage can be tackled at least partially. Desalination activities and water harvesting, and these are linked with water efficiency and water quality. Strengthening local communities, it means that many of the water supply schemes are installed by government, but they are maintained by communities. So if communities are willing and able to take care of these water supply schemes, they can significantly increase the life of these schemes. If they are not maintained properly, they can shut down very quickly. So to make sure that efficiency is reached for the water supply infrastructure that has been built, you need to increase the capability of communities. Okay, so the first part, I'll end the first part here, and from second part onwards, we'll talk about goal 7 and onwards of the SDGs. Thank you.